Welcome back to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Tempty. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Doug Brown joining us. Doug is the Chief Executive Officer of CEO Sales Strategies, and he's a sales, revenue, and profit growth expert. He's led award-winning and high-performance teams and has pioneered profitable development programs for numerous corporations. Our focus today, big surprise, will be on sales management and sales excellence. Welcome to the show, Doug.
Hey, Andy. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so grateful to be here today.
And we were riffing before the show. Doug is in New Hampshire, a place that I respect and really have enjoyed my time there. So very, very cool connection there.
And we welcome you back anytime you want to come.
Nice. I'm not on some list anywhere, hopefully.
I'll check the list, but that last check, I didn't see your name there. So you're
all right,
good.
Excellent. Hey, Doug, before we get rolling, it'd be great if you gave our listeners the elevator pitch version of your story.
Well, I started working at age 3. Literally, my dad had a business, an industrial repair, machine repair company. And I worked with my dad at age 3 and I swept floors for 25 cents a week. I loved it. It was awesome. I had plenty of money, quarter at the end of the week to buy candy, because back then you could buy a handful for, a penny.
Yeah.
But I think the best thing I loved about it was I got to hang out with the adults, and at lunch they'd go to this place called the Starboard Gallery, and it was, just the kind of a pub type atmosphere, and they'd sit me up on the bar stool, and I'd have a Coca-Cola and they'd have their beer or whatever, and I don't think my mother was very happy about that part of it. I did hear a few discussions. But around the age of 5.5 or 6, all my brothers and I went through the same process. We actually were put out in front of clients, and they helped us actually start to write orders. Nice. And so, I'm sure my handwriting wasn't that good back then, because you didn't have a typewriter or, electronic back then. And they would clean my orders up. But I remember one day it kind of hit me. I was making 25 cents an hour at that point. And I sold a part that we paid $10 for, but we sold it for $20. And in my little brain, it went, wait a minute, I just made $10. And then I went, no, I didn't make $10. The company made $10, right? But if I work 40 hours at 25 cents, I make $10 a week, which still isn't bad for a 6-year-old back in, 1968, But my brain went, wait a minute, there's this leverage component. And so I started queuing in on that. And that's what led me to continue to keep going through the process of selling. And I always built these side businesses, and all the way through, 19, I went into the military, all the way through the military. When I got out of the military, hey, you got to have a college degree. I went through there. I was always building side businesses or doing some type of sales process. And I got my degrees and went into the hospital, because my degrees were in biology, nuclear medicine, and other medical fields. And when I got in the hospital, I was like, wait a minute, this is a business. And I could see the sales process going on within the hospital. And I was like, wait a minute, if I'm going to be in business, I might as well just be in sales.
Yeah.
So I toggled out, went to work for a very nice company in the technology space, and became the number 1 rep in that company. And eventually that company sold to a company called Windstream for a couple $2 billion. I started a consulting and auditing company in the telecommunications space, and then just kept building business after business. Eventually that led me to become in some unique positions with guys like Tony Robbins. I was the president of training and sales for some of his companies, Chet Holmes. And I was just always constantly helping build businesses and optimizing processes. And we had some really great wins at those places. And just kind of continued one business to another business, helping one business, getting part ownership in that, or then starting up a company and building that, and all the way up to where we are today at CEO Sales Strategies. I'm involved in that. I have a a brain health company that we're working with that we're, getting ownership in. And we have an insurance business as well.
Excellent. So that's a really, really great timeline. So tell us about CEO sales strategies. There are all sorts of consulting firms in the space. What sets CEO sales strategies apart?
Well, we're math geeks.
Nice.
really, when it comes down to it. And by the way, I'm not really good at math, but I'm really good at measuring metrics and applying math to them.
Good.
So you go with your strengths and staff your weaknesses, right? That's the thing. So my wife happens to have a master's in mathematics, so that's she's always looking at the numbers too. And so really, when I say that, it's like, look, we look at things from a perspective of what are the metrics telling us, and what are the math between the ratios of the metrics telling us, and then from there, how do we optimize what the math is telling us? Because when we measure metrics, so it can be a sales metric from like number of outreaches to number of connections made, for example. That will tell us something. Like if we look at, say, 100 outreaches and we have 6 connections, that's going to tell me that, okay, we got a 6% effectiveness going on there. Why is it only 6%? So you start looking at the math of the ratios. That will start to tell you and tell everybody what the story might be. Now you got to dig into the story. Well, is it because the person is fishing in the wrong pond, so to speak? Is it they're fishing in the right pond, but their messaging is incorrect? Is it they're using the incorrect method, for example, to reach out? Let's say that, you were the CEO of Kaplan, right? Like if I was going to go, if we were going to go try to prospect you, I'm probably not going to find you on Instagram. But, if I was trying to find you on Instagram, it wasn't really more of a business focus, right? I would probably direct mail or cold call you in that regard, right? Or maybe LinkedIn and then go there. So we look at all this, and then what we're doing is we're dialing in the optimization points of that process. If you look at the metrics and the math, and that's what we do. So we're not just like your typical consultant. We're going to do a sales optimization study, a sales revenue study, operations study, all of that. And then we're going to look at those and say, where do you want to optimize this process? Here's where your biggest bang will come in. And that's how we help people to actually predictably grow their revenue.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is you're continuous improvement experts. You're searching, You're digging for root cause. You're asking why. That's a really cool place to be as a sales consultant, is really coming back to proven principles of you got to do the work, ask why, dig for root cause. So thanks for that. I love the bio on your website. You talk about deciding to be an intrapreneur. What does that term mean to you? And if a listener connects with that intrapreneurial spirit, what advice do you have for them to succeed as an intrapreneur?
So an intrapreneur is somebody who actually acts as an entrepreneur within a system or an organization, right? And if you think about it, when you get a business partner, you're an intrapreneur, really, when it comes down to it, by the definition of what I do, right? So what I like to do is work in a team aspect, because certain people have far better skills at things than I have, for example, right? And it's not that I'm inept in those skills, or maybe I am, but I would try to learn part of that skill to understand what they're doing. But as an intrapreneur, you gain the leverage. So remember back when I was 5 or 6 years old, right? I saw the leverage, I saw the light, so to speak, the leverage light. And so for me, I always look at where is the leverage that I can capitalize on. So I am much better off, even though I have built numerous companies from the ground up, I would be much better off finding an existing company, for example, that's already working, and then plugging my brilliance into that as an intrapreneur, and then being able to take all those years of those systems that are already working, optimize those systems, be within that company. And let's say I took I'm doing this right now with a brain health company. I'm actually optimizing all of their sales processes and helping them build out the sales team much more effectively. But we're aligning with the marketing department. We're aligning with the customer service department, the operations, the coaching department, where I'm aligning throughout the whole process and using my ability to be an entrepreneur in a system, thus being an entrepreneur. And we're already seeing massive gains within the first 2 months in their company.
Yeah. So if somebody's working inside a company and they see the leverage points, one of the things that they tend not to do is ask the question, how can I get involved? And B, what's the economic relationship going to look like? How can I get a piece of that as we grow the business? They tend not to ask that question. How can I, get a different bonus plan or earn an equity stake here so that I can make some real money from this leverage point that I'm seeing that we all win from. How do you coach this person to screw up the courage to ask those questions?
So usually courage comes from within, which usually stems from their childhood, right? A lot of times. So, we all have, like I grew up in the environment, good is never good enough. So why would you ask for more, right? It's like, I've done a lot of work internally to I would say challenge and continuously challenge those things, because we carry these things with us throughout our adult life. And so the question is how often does it impact one, right? So, and I've been privy to be around people who are literally, multi-billionaires or billionaires, and people think, well, when they get to that level, they won't have those issues. They still have them. Mm-hmm. I can tell you for sure, right? I've seen Tony Robbins at times be emotional, right? I respect Tony a great deal. So it's one of those things that, how do you do it? So firstly, we want to create awareness around why are we doing it or are we not doing it? Because a lot of times there's just this scotomic thing that's going on where people are not even aware, they're not asking.
Right.
They're showing up, they're being their best self that they know, but they're just not asking. And so the reality is, then I teach them to be more like a 2 or 3 year old. Why? Can this happen? Can that happen? Yep. How come? Right? And so once they start asking, then things start opening up. And it's really not any more, involved than just getting the awareness around there, starting to work on the triggers that are causing us that trepidation or fear, which it usually is. And then from there, just asking. And so it's crazy when people just ask, that people are like, what took you so long to ask? Right? That's how they get involved. Like literally, I teach my daughters this all the time. It's like, they're like, well, this is happening at the company I was at, or this is happening with a friend or whatever. And I'm like, just talk to them.
Yeah.
Like, right. Literally.
I love your, think like a 2 or 3 year old, just, or 4 or 5, just ask why, just start the conversation, be curious. I don't know, there's some sort of a smackdown that happens somewhere, as we're aging where we're told not to ask why or not to question. And it really, really hurts, that inquisitiveness, that curiousness. Well, Doug, we're going to take a really short commercial break, and then we'll come back and talk more about sales and sales management. Hey, everyone. I'd like to invite you to start your weekend with me on the Saturday Morning Muse podcast. I briefly explore topics that span leadership, business management, education, and personal continuous improvement. Subscribe to the Saturday Morning Muse podcast on your favorite podcast streaming app or visit andrewtempty.com for more information. And we're back with Doug Brown talking about sales and revenue management. Doug, I like to ask this question of sales professionals because there's a pretty big difference between being a sales professional and being a sales manager. Let's suppose you have a sales professional with a really solid track record. They're knocking the cover off the ball, and then they get the tap on the shoulder and says, hey, would you like to manage people? Would you like to manage this small team? What's your advice to this individual to make that transition successfully or even make it at all? What kind of pitfalls are lurking?
So there are two different profiles of people, right? For the jobs, the job set itself is two different profiles. A manager, for example, will love coaching other people and growing the revenue of a company, a department, if you will. They love spreadsheets. They love pivot tables. They love all that stuff. Traditionally, a salesperson, a top performer, does not like spreadsheets, does not like pivot tables, does not like organization like that, does not want to coach other people. They want to be at the top. So, it's a different race to run. So, firstly, the question is, do you actually want that position? Because I've seen many times where they'll hire a top producer because they think, oh, well, they can train these other people and, they can teach these other people. And that's a wonderful thing. But do they belong as the manager, right? It's kind of like you got this amazing server in a restaurant, for example, and the person just loves people and it's like the happy butterfly person. And now they move them into head of customer service where they're constantly hearing complaining and this is too cold and this is too hot and I didn't get my seat at time, right? It's not the right place for that person to be. So anybody who's going to do this, ask that question first. Because now, if they want to move into that and then it's clearly defined to them what the job is and they accept that job, then making that transition is going to be a matter of training themselves and being trained into how to be a great manager, a high producing manager. And a manager's job really is a couple of things. One, growing the department revenue or whoever you're managing, growing their revenue as a collective. Two, coaching and training people on a consistent basis so they individually grow. And three, making accurate forecasting so the management above can actually count on what we give as a commit.
Yep.
Right? As a manager, you shouldn't be selling. Right?
Right.
Right? Those are the three job roles. And, if you're really great at doing those three, you'll be a successful manager. And then, moving from a manager to a division manager, managing departments is the same thing. You're just going to manage the department heads and they're going to do the same thing and so on and so on and so on. So my advice to anybody who's going to do that is if they're going to want to be a manager, great. Let's train them to see if they can be before we throw them into the fire of being a manager. Because usually what happens if you take a top producer, you throw them into a management role, they don't transition back as well as they did prior to them being there. Mm. And I think part of it is because, okay, the management thing failed. Now they're back in the group and it's a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes they're better off left as a top producer. And frankly, the other thing too about a manager and a top producer will make more money than the manager will make usually.
Yeah, right.
So just because we're throwing them into a management role does not mean that they're going to accelerate their income. And a top producer is always somebody who wants to be number one for whatever reason, but they always want to be there. Like number two drives them crazy, right? So are they going to take the same thing and apply it as the manager so that their whole department becomes number one and then they can become the division manager that becomes number one for the East Coast, Midwest, and the West or whatever. Like we're competing against that level. Can we still embrace that part of it? And if not, don't make them a manager. But if so, then they'll be a great manager as long as they understand the gig.
Yeah. So before the break, I was going to ask this question. And I think it's a great time to do it. Let's take a step back from there, and suppose you've got a college grad sitting right in front of you right now. They're looking for that first job, and sales looks really interesting to them, and so they take their first sales job. What skills should they be working on early in their career to become that top performer? Can you train a top performer, or is it ingrained in the individual? Is it part of the who a top performer is?
Yeah, my experience is you can train somebody to be a top performer.
Excellent.
All right, so all the skills can be trained. The one thing that can't be trained though is desire. Mm. If they don't have the commitment to the desire to being that person, that can't be trained, right? It's like an Olympic athlete. The Olympic athlete actually has that desire to stand up on the podium and collect a medal. And if they don't have that desire, no matter how much training we provide to that person, they can become really good, but they won't become that consistent top producer. But it definitely can be trained. I've taken people with no sales experience whatsoever. And I've even taken challenges on where people are like, well, no, they're too methodical. They won't be able to sell. And I will tell you, the methodical people can sell better than other people when they're trained. I've taken accountants, engineers, people who just have this highly methodical mind who had no sales training whatsoever and help them be top producers within their company. And so it's definitely able to be trained. But the desire factor, and then again, you got to look at what type of sales are we doing. All right. So are we going to be positioning more as an expert, let's say, in the sales process? If so, you're going to want somebody who has that ability to position themselves as an expert. Are we going to want somebody who can, rip a credit card out of somebody's hand while they're driving down the highway over the phone, right? So we look at ego states, empathy. We can measure all of these factors, and then we can measure specific sales skills. Can they sell consultatively? Can they, do they have the desire to win, right? All of these things can be measured. And so that's the thing we do. We look at them, we take great assessments, we measure these things, we find out, okay, here's the spectrum of where they are. And now we've got to raise this up. This one's fine. Raise that one up. This one's fine. Two more are fine. This one we got to bolster up. So there's a lot of factors there, but the reality is, the answer is absolutely, salespeople are born, because everyone who's born is a salesperson.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they are made. And it just depends on whether or not they have the desire to do that or not.
Yeah, thanks for bringing us there, because for a long, long time, I tried to convince myself that I wasn't a salesperson. I wasn't, I didn't want to have anything to do with sales. I was very, focused on the numbers and growing the business overall. And then it dawned on me, I'm selling myself all the time. I'm selling my ideas all the time. I'm a salesperson, and I better get really good at this, because I'm not going to be able to get away from that. So, last question before we go to our lightning round. A lot of, you see it all the time. Just do this and your sales career will take off. Silver bullet here, silver bullet there. Are there any silver bullets in sales, or is it the work?
There are silver bullets that will enhance the work, right? AI. It's a silver bullet today if people don't realize it, right? It will do routine tasks in the blink of an eye compared to what we used to have to do. We can automate certain things that we never could automate to make it much more effective and efficient. But the bottom line is, we are selling not to titles, we are selling to human beings. And the need for human being communication will never go away, I don't believe. We're emotional, You know, you have IQ, EQ, right? I mean, we are people who have always needed each other to connect with for survival. You know, we're not lone bears in the woods that every once in a while, you know, find, oh, it's mating season and that's it. You know, the majority of us are not wired that way. We are wired to be communicative and, you know, we like social structure. And, you know, it's been proven if we want to live longer that we better have a social structure. The blue zones of the world, you know, show that those who have a great social structure and interaction live longer and are happier. So if we just look at that premise alone, there are no silver bullets. It's very easy. It's the principle of business. Money in, money out equals something. So for us as a salesperson, get a lead, you know, talk to the lead, close the lead, you know, help them, do it ethically, play win-win-win. They win, you win. It's best sale in the world. And preferably someone else wins. And you will get paid. They will solve a problem, gain an opportunity, or achieve a goal. That's sales. And, you know, if we don't complicate it, that's the root of everything, really, when it comes down to it. Just deal with human beings on the level of human beings. They have a problem. They have an opportunity they want to gain. They want to get a goal. Help them do that. You're selling.
Yeah.
They'll pay you.
All right. So authenticity sounds like it's key. So desire, authenticity, those are some of the key ingredients.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the rest is certainly there is a formal process around certain things. If you're selling into a corporate environment, for example, as you know, you're going to have certain, you know, it's a different dance.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to learn the dance steps, but that's pretty academic. Yeah. You know, you can figure that out. Just type into Chat GPT. You know, I want to sell to a CEO. Give me the top 17 steps that I should be doing or whatever, and it'll just lay it out for you.
Yeah. Well, Doug, it's been wonderful having you on the show today. Just, I got to ask you the time machine question. I put you in a time machine. You can send a message to an earlier version of Doug Brown. What's the message and what previous version of yourself do you send it to?
The message would be go with your own instincts versus listening to, you could listen to others, but make your own decision based on what you know you want internally. And I would have sent that back to me when I was probably 8, 9 years old. Right?
Yeah. You got started early, Doug.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I don't know if my dad did that because he wanted to teach us all that or he wanted low-cost labor. I never had a chance to ask him.
All sorts of child labor laws were broken in the making of this story. Nice. Doug, where can folks get a hold of you?
They can reach out to me directly by email if they want at doug@ceosalesstrategies.com. Some people hit me up on LinkedIn. It's Doug Brown 123. If they want to know more about me, just type Doug C. Brown revenue growth or something like that in the thing. Don't type just Doug Brown because up will come a hockey player from the Detroit Red Wings and I can't skate very well. So, but if you type in Doug C. Brown, then I pretty much will come up everywhere. But just reach out to me if you have questions. Be happy to answer those.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being on the show today, Doug.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
All right. My name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share today's episode with your friends and your colleagues. The show is produced by Nicholas Temte, and we'll see you next time on the Balancing Act.